So we talked about Sam Harris's appearance over on the Joe Rogan Experience. He certainly did not impress. In fact, he said some stunning things, as we talked about. And the most stunning of those things that he said is that the Democrats need a young Bloomberg, that being basically a young billionaire who can call out Trump on his fake business acumen. This is legitimately the dumbest argument I've ever heard. It is the most ridiculous, just assertion I've ever heard in my entire life. And I went into as to why that's very stupid for many different reasons. But, unfortunately for someone like Sam Harris, it just seems like the guy is not top notch when it comes to politics. Now, he may have his stuff in, the other areas, but it's very clear that politics simply isn't the spot you want to look at. Now, he's right on some things, like his opposition to Trump, but a lot of that opposition is different than, the Bernie Wings opposition, for example. But there's also the guy who supported Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, and we ended up seeing how that went down. It did not end up well. So despite anything you think, it's been clear he's kind of had a record of just being bad on politics. But even having the, little idea that a young Bloomberg is the way to go for the Democrats, it's absolutely ridiculous. Now, Michael Brooks has been a pretty consistent criticizer of Sam Harris, and he is going to criticize him here on the Michael Brooks Show. I'm going to show you guys the clip, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
We have to find someone who can stand outside the circular firing squad, right? And it would be someone who's, it would be, in my view, it would be somebody like a younger Bloomberg, right? I mean, I don't think it's Bloomberg, but like somebody like a legit businessman who could call bullshit on all of Trump's fake business acumen, and
pause it.
Who's not?
Sorry, I have to do a pause it. Most freaked out about it were not in the pocket of voters, anyways. There was no segment that you could actually measure of people that were like, oh yeah, I was totally going to vote for Democrats, but because I'm so freaked out by sharing a bathroom with somebody or whatever the fuck else is going on in your head to actually motivate you to vote in such a ludicrous, fear-based way, that I flip my vote. It's not empirically valid. It's not empirically sound.
And it's also just fucking wrong. Like, the thing about Sam Harris is, like, he's talking this old trope that's been in American politics for decades. It's like, oh, what we need is a neutral businessman to come in and they'll win president because people can agree on the center. Nobody fucking wants that. Even politicians, like, we could talk about Obama and, like, his legacy being sort of centrist. Obama wasn't running and presenting himself as, like, a centrist guy. Obama had a very, like, a bold campaign that really inspired people and had a lot of energy behind it. Right. Americans don't want to vote for, and same thing with Donald Trump. Not in a good way, but Donald Trump was, very loud and there was energy because he was saying, crazy right-wing stuff, right? But he was going out there and was really passionate about a certain thing.
But that's what Sam Harris wants, because Sam Harris is projecting
They want
his
this kind of
identity
monotone politician.
Because that's who he is.
Yeah.
It's the most raw form. Look, it's one thing to have a conversation about identity politics, about groups, particularly groups that are presently and historically repressed. I think we can all agree that literal identity politics, as in I as a singular soul individual would like my personal biases represented in a candidate, I think we all could hold a check on. So I understand why Sam Harris specifically wants a young Mike in his, of course, it being Sam Harris, we're still not even talking about a thing that actually exists. But I understand why he would want something like that. But it doesn't represent anything other than a small of other cluster of people who are already way over influential. And let me just add one other thing. He's alluding to there, and he actually, he's talking about the left eating its own in another part of the clip. And again, I think, coming to the right place in the wrong way about some of the aspects of this culture that I certainly don't like. But I think a big part of the problem with like that culture he's talking about is hyper literalism and a complete reduction of human beings to a one-dimensional variable. Ed, in his public discourse, precisely that punitive literalist approach as much as anybody.
Yeah, but it's like somebody like Sam Harris, when he's advocating, look, and he does it, he speaks very slowly and calmly. But, you know, his politics, he's very much advocating for the wheel of capitalism, imperialism, and neoliberalism to crush not only billions of people, but in that specific clip that we were talking about, when he's talking about trans rights, and as you rightfully pointed out, no one's coming on, you know, pushing some kind of radical agenda. What he's saying,
They're talking about equity.
Yeah, no,
equity.
like basic human compassion and like defending, you know,
at
basic
a time
human
when,
rights.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but literally at a time when this administration is talking about canceling it as a fucking identity, literally. And he's saying, oh,
he says, what we need to do is we need to stomp on vulnerable people so that we can get Trump out of office. And it's so cynical because, you know, he doesn't, because to say that, you have to not care about that group of people. And, you know, I'll say that really, like, I mean, and it's like, and it's,
So, yeah, I think that Michael and, you know, his co-host are definitely on point on a bunch of different points that they made there. So, first of all, obviously saying that this idea that we need a centrist is legitimately the stupidest thing ever, and I've never understood this, especially when it comes from people like Dave Rubin, because Dave Rubin, for example, constantly claims that, you know, Hillary Clinton was a far leftist, and he wished that there would be a blue dog Democrat. Now, the obvious problem with that whole blue dog Democrat desire is that we had a blue dog Democrat. That was Hillary Clinton. She was a barely, you know, left. So, see, I say barely left of center. Some people would just say she's Republican. I'm going to stick to left of barely, slightly, very, very tinily left of center just because, you know, she was better on social issues than Republicans, as well as not wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So I'm going to put her at slightly left of Republicans, but some people just outright say she's a Republican. So how the hell could you possibly say that the way to go is a centrist rather than somebody who would, you know, boost up the base, which is what someone like Bernie Sanders would do? That's the whole point of having someone like Bernie Sanders. And also, what I don't understand about the idea of a centrist or a young Bloomberg, as Sam Harris put it, is you're sort of being counterintuitive to the whole point of we need to win an election. Because the point of winning an election should always be like the stem of it, right? The root, the base of it should be we want to entice and incentivize people to go out and vote. And so anytime you go more centrist, right, you're talking about automatically, you're talking about losing enthusiasm. That's what you're talking about, because that's what's going to happen. Whether you like it or not, you're going to lose enthusiasm when you start moving to the center, because when you start giving these stupid milquetoast positions, that's what's going to end up happening. And so no one's going to come out to vote for you. And if someone like, you know, this imaginary young Bloomberg were to run, legitimately nobody would like this person because they would be saying just complete nonsense. Even Kamala Harris, for example, she's doing what Hillary Clinton was too incompetent to do, which is falsely adopt these further left-wing policies that have shown consistently through polling data that, you know, they're extremely popular amongst the people. She has done what Hillary Clinton was too incompetent to do, which was she wasn't even competent enough to say, hey, you know, think in her head, you know, oh, I don't actually believe in these things, but hey, I'm going to fakely co-opt these to win an election. Because if she did that, trust me, she probably would have won. I'm pretty sure she would have won had she came out in the general election and went left. But she didn't do that. That's what Kamala Harris is doing. So this idea of a young Bloomberg is legitimately the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And it's tough to hear it from Sam Harris because you just have, like, you know, your kind of immediate reaction is just disappointment. And when it comes to mixed bags, I mean, there's Hitch and then there's Sam Harris, dude. They're like neck and neck for, you know, mixed bags. Sam especially, though, because, you know, he'll be anti-Trump, which is right, but then he'll start, you know, saying crazy stuff like the whole race science and all that shit. So he really, you know, gets stuff right and wrong. He was really right on the Brett Kavanaugh issue. He really broke that down well, very well, in fact. And I made a video about that because it was so on point. But then you see something here, like where you go, you know, the Democrats need a young Bloomberg. And it's like, dude, are you serious? How could you possibly formulate this? What method of thought did you use? Especially considering that we've already got billionaires right now running. We see Howard Schultz running. Now, I think it would be different if you were a Democrat, but I still don't think that, you know, the Democrats would like him. Like, they would dislike him less because there would be less of the spoiler thought. But I really, really, really doubt any of the Democratic Party would be really happy to go out and vote for him, because when you have a pampered billionaire, D-bag who has the gall to have a shit ton of money, and they come to you and say to your face and to everyone's faces that we can't afford Medicare for all, we can't afford free college, and blah, 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 you're not, who's going to support you? No one's going to support you, dude, and that's the problem. So this is really ridiculous, and I have a theory why, and this is the thing. A lot of people were saying this, and it plays into him lacking an economic analysis of elections. Like, he didn't mention anywhere in there, I think he touches a little bit on jobs being shipped overseas, but he doesn't make a connection into outflanking left, Trump outflanking Hillary to the left. But there's not really an economic analysis in there. It's just kind of like my SJWs type thing. It's just some far left SJW candidate. I don't even really know what that means, to be honest with you. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? But the point I'm trying to make is, and remember, this is something that a lot of people don't know, but he was actually born into a shit ton of wealth. His mom was, I think, the writer for Golden Girls or something like that. So and that doesn't disqualify him from having an opinion or even degrade his opinion, but you can clearly draw a connection as to, oh, you are cool with the massive billionaire because you were born into a lot of wealth. And you can also see, and you can also recognize the noticeable absence of economic analysis in terms of, factoring into elections due to, his massive wealth that he was born into. So that's kind of the situation here with Sam Harris. This is legitimately one of the worst things I've seen from Sam Harris. It's probably not the worst, but this is a really bad analysis to say the least.